Hello and welcome to co-selling in a complex ecosystem and hyper-scaled scalar world. So I'm very excited to be here with these esteemed, fabulous, amazing guests. My name is Teresa Carragon, the CEO of AchieveUnite. And let me introduce my fabulous guest stars. So I'll start with Amy Belcher. Go ahead, Amy.
Hey everyone, thanks so much, Teresa. I'm Amy Belcher, and I'm the Director of Global ISV and Go-to-Market Sales for AWS and Worldwide Public Sector. I've had the pleasure of being in the channel for 24 years, and I've seen all different aspects of the channel, from reseller to solution provider. I worked at a distributor, had the pleasure of working with my friend Chris Millerick at EMC, and of course, now I'm at AWS. So thanks again, Teresa, for the invitation today. I'm really excited about this.
I'm really glad you're here. It's a great group. Larissa.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. This is going to be fun. Larissa Crandall, Global Vice President of New Relic, both channel and alliance side. I've been in the channel my whole life. Started out at a solution provider for 15 years. Got hooked in and haven't left it since. So really looking forward to the talk today.
You have a great partner-oriented CRO that I adore.
We sure do. And yeah, CEO and CRO for sure.
CEO and CRO, that's fabulous. All right, Chris Millerick.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. And first of all, thanks so much for having me. So Chris Millerick, I lead global partner sales and alliances at Infoblox, and I've been in go-to-market roles and sales and in partner sales roles, from individual contributor to leadership roles for the last 20 plus years, and thrilled to be with you all.
I'm so glad you all are here, and I'm really excited because you bring such a different mix of perspective selling with hyperscalers. So let's jump into it, and we'll just let it go. As you know, just talk, and if you want to add in things as we go along, that's fabulous. So let's start with, what is your view of co-selling? How important is it becoming in this market? Very. How does it differ by the maturity and partnering maturity of the vendor? And Amy, why don't you start, and then Larissa, and then Chris?
Absolutely. So I view co-selling as fundamental. It's table stakes. It's the force multiplier for us to ultimately solve customer problems and earn customer trust. Each party in a co-selling motion brings their respective value to the table. And I love to use analogies when I'm talking, like if I'm talking to my parents and, what do you do? Do you work for Amazon Prime? No, not exactly, Mom. That's not really what I do. But if I use an analogy for co-selling, I'm at the phase of life where kids go into college, trying to select colleges. Us as parents, plus the guidance counselor, plus the student, plus the respective college are all working together to find that right cultural fit for our child and ultimately get them the skills and the training to go be employed and hopefully off the payroll someday. That co-teaming type relationship, that partnership with finding the right university for your child is very similar to what we do in a co-sell environment. Within AWS, we work with ISVs like Infoblox and New Relic and other partners to solve customer problems. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're driving customer adoption, increasing the customer value, saving them money, increasing their security, and expanding the market reach. And my dear friend Teresa wrote this book, Partnering for Success. And I love this one. I'm old school, so I highlight and I use Post-it notes. But at the end of the book, it says, it's about earning your seat at the table as a trusted advisor. And I think that's the greatest point of many great points in this book. That's really what it means to co-sell, is being a trusted advisor.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Larissa, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think, let me say what I believe it's not. It's not a one-time transaction. I think it's your entry point. And I think a lot of people think marketplace means co-sell, and it's just that transaction based. And I think both sellers on both sides have to understand the value that each other brings. And I also think there's missed opportunities sometimes if you aren't co-selling together and really helping out and having that customer-centric approach to that, you miss. So I think that's something that I'm continually having to, to train and educate. And I think it's on both sides.
We talk about accidental co-sell and deliberate co-selling and what it really means to be deliberate in our training programs. Chris, you've got a lot to say about co-sell and cost of coverage.
I do. And I think a big part of it, it's, interestingly enough, summed up really well from actually some comments that I got to hear when I was in the audience at AWS Reinforce in DC. Last year, got to hear from Chris Betts, right? At the time, relatively new CISO for AWS. And I think what he really struck a chord, at least from my perspective, and then with my team, we got a chance to chat afterwards, was that, IT buyers today, you're not buying in a silo, right? There's no technology that's going to come in and work independently, in the organization of IT as a standalone solution. Everything's got to fit together. And, I think Chris kind of captured it well to say, you've been a CISO in a number of these high-powered companies coming in. And he kind of said, listen, I'm not saying this just to kind of pat myself on the back. I'm saying it because I've had to solve really similar problems at each of the companies where I've been a CISO. And so, who do I spend time with? I spend time with vendors that can talk to the whole picture, because I've inherited a ton of potentially some tech debt. And then as I think about solutions that I'm going to look at, I need to understand how it's going to fit into my environment. And so, the vendors that can come in and they have a co-sell mentality, they're engaged with the partner community, they're engaged with AWS, right? You're already thinking about how you can address the customer's situation in context to how they have to deal with it day in and day out, right? In the day job. So I think co-sell for our team and Infoblox, and certainly how we coach our direct sellers, how my partner sales organization works with our partner ecosystem, is really about how can we address the customer problem, be really hyper-focused on the customer problem, and then take a step back and go, we can't solve it by ourselves. There's a whole ecosystem that surrounds this customer. How do we proactively connect, create that co-sell agreement and engagement across the partner ecosystem, so that as we approach the customer, we're in a position to really, really address the challenges that they may have, but in context to how they want to receive it. So it's co-sell obviously is very much ingrained into how we think about our go-to-market, because we want to be effective and efficient with our customers. We're going to value their time. We have to give them the harbor tour of our products every single time they come in. They're going to get a little tired of that. So that's our approach.
Great. So, Larissa, you can maybe start on the next question. One of the things that I think, Chris, you and I have seen firsthand, and Amy, is we start to talk about co-sell, but then it quickly rises to, wait, we need to talk about the rest of the co's, the co-investments, the co-solutioning, the co-building, the co-marketing. So talk to us about your views, Larissa, and then Amy, and then Chris, on the co's and how do they play a role?
Sure. I was fortunate to actually sit in to an EV, executive visioning session, which was incredible. You basically whiteboard your solution together with AWS and all those stakeholders in the room, everyone from sales to marketing to the technology teams, CTOs, all of it. We started with co-build. So we were really paying attention to obviously what we were building together. Our CMO spent some time talking about co-marketing, and then we moved into co-sell. What that everything's connected. And I think that's really important. You have to remember that, because again, it goes back to what I was saying. It's not just a transaction. You're missing the point if you don't start with what are you building, how are you marketing it, and then educating both sides. Then that feeds into all the other co's. Then you know how to be prescriptive, how to go out to certain markets, how to hit a certain vertical together, how to align with certain leaders within the organization. So I think that was for me eye-opening, to put everybody in the same room and then build some goals on top of that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Amy, obviously you know this session well, probably.
Larissa summed it up fantastic. I know this phrase is a little cliche, but better together. Better together is the story. So if you think about it, if Larissa, Chris, and I each have $1, and we invest that dollar and we go out with our respective sales and technical teams and try and maximize the benefit of that dollar, yeah, well, we can all do great things independently, but together it's $3, and combine our sales and technical resources as one team, the scale is significant. And it ultimately means co-branded campaigns, us working together with that better together story. AWS marketplace listings where we expedite the procurement process from months to days and sometimes hours, and then joint events, webinars, and conferences where we're together pushing out the power of our collective brands to solve customer problems. Great.
Chris, any comments on the co's?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously everything that's already been said is spot on, right? From my perspective, we've really kind of tried to take an approach when we thought about our partnership with AWS, and it's, I'm going to say, a dose of humility on our end, right? Because we recognize the unbelievable value and leverage of the partnership that it creates. We have a ton of shared customers, and at the same time, we have a ton of shared customers that we believe we can help accelerate their journey to frankly re-platform more effectively and faster into AWS, right? When Infoblox is a part of that story. And so part of being able to try to unlock that vision was to take a step back and go, okay, what's in it for the customer? Now, what's in it for AWS? Not just what's in it for AWS from a technology perspective, but what's in it for the AWS seller? Because as much as there's, again, the power of the visioning sessions and the corporate alignment, the one thing that I definitely admire about AWS is that there's a ton of empowerment in the field. And so realistically, for this to come to life, you've got to really think about the stakeholders in the field. And that comes down to, okay, how is this going to really resonate with that seller that goes, okay, I believe the better together story too, because I materially can see how it can accelerate me on my journey to ultimately retire my quota and also provide value back to my customers so that they want to pull us forward and leverage more native services, help re-platform, re-architect for, as a part of the AWS ecosystem.
And the speed, the thing that strikes me about this hyperscaler world is the speed at which deals and opportunities and sales for these sellers go so much faster when a hyperscaler is involved. Sometimes they're slower, but overall, it is unbelievable what, Amy, your organization has accomplished in being able to drive speed.
If I may chime in for a moment on that, Teresa, I'd share, early on, part of, for us as an organization, not just really trying to provide the understanding that back to and evangelize back to our larger sales organization, even evangelizing back to our executive leadership as to, how critical it is for us to get co-selling and then how we transact in the marketplace right. And really try to make it as formulaic as possible so that there's a real recipe for success that our sellers could take and just use that playbook. And what I would tell you early on is one of the success stories we had. Talk about the power of speedy procurement by using the marketplace. We're working with one of our large strategic customers, and generally it's a 5 VP sign-off procurement process. Generally, that goes in 4 to 5 weeks to get that done. We had shared with them, we'd worked with them. They had a committed spend as well. We were eligible product in the marketplace. We worked with them, unheard of for us with this particular customer, but within 72 hours, we were able to get that order done. We got it in early, actually early for our quarter. Customer was thrilled, right? It was like all of the you kind of go like, all right, check 1, 2, 3. Like, it hit all of the highlights as to the kind of why you want to leverage the marketplace as a part of your selling motion. And that was fantastic. This was legitimately the first transaction we put through the marketplace, had that story attached to it. Great. So it just was such a great thing to then go out and evangelize to our sellers of here's what's possible.
Yeah, right.
You have to leverage. Who doesn't AWS know? So I think that's what we're always saying to sellers is you're crazy if you're not spending time and doing account planning and slow down. It goes back to, it's not just a transaction. It's a customer. You're trying to solve a use case, a business outcome, whatever it is. It's really important to get that interlock in the field and with the leaders, because then you're right, speed, acceleration, lifetime customer value, all of that. It's really important.
Yeah, we talk about the speed to trust, and I feel like AWS propels the speed to trust at all of these different levels. All right, let's get into the next one, because this is one of my favorite topics in the world, which is the skills. So skills are really important, because what got us here isn't maybe going to get us there. And I'm watching a lot of very senior sellers who've been doing this a really long time, because I'm not the youngest, y'all are much younger than me, trying to do it the same way, and it can't be done the same way. And then these up and comers, and they also have a lot to learn from kind of this new motion and faster motion. So let's talk about the skills required in co-selling in a hyperscaler world. And what do you think? What's the must-haves? Amy, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think sales is the easy button, and I can say that being a sales leader, that I see so many times that sales leaders, sales reps, channel market reps are hired, and that's fantastic. Those are quota carrying, bag carrying roles where they're on a mission. They're coin operated on a mission to sell more stuff. But what I often see, Teresa, as the miss is the technical peer of that seller. More and more, we're selling to line of business owners. That's what we should be doing. And I have my solution architect peer. I'm sure he probably doesn't like this on some days. I've got him on speed dial. And if I'm making a customer call, that technical expert is in lockstep with me. We are tied at the hip. So sales is important. Again, don't want to undermine that. But in a world where we're working with critical, very strategic partners like New Relic and Infoblox with intellectual property, we have to be able to go deep technically. So I'd say first is the technical resource. And then I'd also say the ability to easily and simply articulate the value prop. What I tell my team is, if you can't describe to me what your job is and what your respective ISVs do in 60 seconds, we have a problem. You should be able to get on an elevator with our CEO and say, I support New Relic and Infoblox, and here's what they do, and here's what I do as an account manager in 60 seconds or less. What I see sometimes is ISVs in particular go really deep on what I call old school kind of hardware speeds and beats. Need to take that up a level, simplify the message, simplify the value proposition with real life customer references and use cases. Because there's nothing a customer loves than to hear from other customers how the solution was leveraged in the problems that it solves. That's it from my perspective, Teresa.
Fantastic.
I think I love this, just to jump in, Teresa, if you don't mind. I think one of the things is you have to know the motivations for each of the sellers on both sides. So how are they paying it? So we're driving more workloads. Sellers want that at AWS. Explain, and Amy had brought up a great point on, you have to articulate your value prop, but push it into a use case. This is how we do this. This is why you should care. This is how we solve this business outcome. And you're absolutely right. And that, I think one of the other key pieces that you brought up is on having those technical teams on both sides, because if you can replicate that and continue, they will go find more opportunities. So each side, again, needs to know how what each other solves, for sure.
We're doing a number of these co-sell programs with organizations, and one thing that you just said is around the motivations. And one of the exercises we do is what are each of your motivations from a business standpoint, but then also from a personal standpoint, right? If my quota is this and your quota is this and this, and how do I make sure that all of those are aligned? And then the second thing is, now that we're selling in this ecosystem, like, you have to lean into hard conversations, right? The worst relationships are the ones where you didn't have the hard conversation. So we're teaching some of those skills about trust that people kind of think, well, oh, well, whatever, So yeah, it's quite interesting. Chris, what do you think?
No, I think it's a great call out, because it's not necessarily it's not an automatic muscle for some folks.
That's true.
Particularly as they as you transition as well, I think many times as an ISV, when you think about partnering, you're the center of your own universe. As you work with a hyperscaler like AWS, the sheer size and scale, right, for an individual seller in terms of just frankly the quota alone that they have, the responsibility back, and the sheer kind of size of that number. We're pretty formulaic to make sure that, because for many of our sellers, our initiative over the last really year and a half in earnest to get our go-to-market aligned and tuned to execute through the marketplace, to execute as a co-selling motion with AWS, it was, it's a brave new world for some of our sellers. And so being able to really go, okay, let's take a step back, right? We're going to focus in on crisp message, right? What's in it for AWS? What's in it for our shared customers? What's in it for you as a seller? Why should you care? And why now? Right? Just very crisp and succinct on that. And then go, okay, here's essentially a 5-point process that we're going to lead with you. So when we think about our direct sales organization, like my partner sellers take on the responsibility to do the co-sell registration, and then to actually help to set up that first call with the AWS seller to bring the two team members together. And we'll pre-call plan with our sellers, just do a quick run through, make sure that when we get on that call, we are just maniacally focused to ensure that the AWS rep feels that we are not there to waste their time. There's a very, very clear reason we think we can drive a great business outcome together for our shared customer. And then at the end, we'll have an ask, because if they like what they heard and how we could relate to that specific customer, we've got a few others on the list. You can cover these.
That's great.
Any interest in us going out and having another conversation? Perhaps we can bring this kind of value to your client, in another way. So I think but the reason why I come back to that, it's a little formulaic, and it's, and when we're kind of leading them down the path from an engagement perspective, because where it's new muscle, it's also not necessarily that they don't have 1,000 co-sell registrations out of the gate. So, and it's important that they get it right each time. And so there is a little bit of this coaching and guiding along the way, so that it becomes a part of the way that they think and how they engage. And we're finding, we learned along the way as well. So I'd love to say it was all absolutely crisp execution out of the gate. We definitely had some learnings, and I think a few bumps on some of those calls out of the gate. But we learned. I'm going to say we learned from it quickly. We changed. Right, we implemented approaches that we thought would be effective, and we're finding that this is exactly what it is. Our co-sell pipeline has probably 10x'd, and our marketplace transactions are absolutely on the right trajectory. So it's exciting for us.
Larissa, anything else you would add to the skills conversation?
No, I mean, I think the way you started out with the question is and Chris hit it. It's a new muscle for a lot of sellers. So you don't treat an AWS seller the way you would, treat and engage another type of partner. It's a different muscle. Sometimes they think it's competition. Sometimes they think they lose control. And it just goes back to, it's a partnership. This is a partner, and looking at it that way in a different lens has really helped accelerate some opportunities that we had. We just closed out our year. I saw some of the transactions going through and the engagement from sellers, chasing, to get a deal done and really working collaboratively together. But it's a new muscle for some. And you're right, Chris, you're not going to get it perfect. I mean, this is something that sellers got to work at both sides.
Absolutely. We've got several questions. Go ahead.
I was just gonna tie off on that to say, one of the things that we found when we first got started, and perhaps this is why we might have had a couple of bumps, was, very excited to get engaged. How can we get things co-sell registered? How can we drive through the marketplace? And so it was really trying to take existing business or existing forecasted opportunities that were kind of in the chute ready to close, and going, how can we take this from the traditional route we would normally do and bring it through the marketplace? And what we found is, and don't get me wrong, it was pretty effective, but it's not necessarily an organic way to collaborate earlier in the sales cycle, actually uncover where we have this joint value, and then all of a sudden we are locked in as a team to go execute that transaction, collectively and drive it through the marketplace. So one of the things we absolutely, got as an early learning was, just like most things in the partnership, engage early, right? Collaborate early in the cycle.
Have a
Think about
strategy, right?
crystal registering as a part of that, say early stage opportunities. So now as they grow and mature through the natural cycle, you're in lockstep with AWS. And then frankly, that's when all of a sudden you go, oh, our average sales cycle time was X and now it is Y.
Yeah.
That's a huge value back to the team. So that's one of the things that we've seen.
That's great. Amy, do you think companies are helping sellers upskill? We are.
I do.
A lot.
Yeah, I am seeing it a lot more. And just to piggyback on what Larissa and Chris just said, one thing we talk about a lot in my organization, Teresa, is it's about progress, not perfection. So in the first couple of co-sell deals together, they might be a little bit bumpy because we're learning each other's organizations. We're learning who's who has boots on the ground, that sort of thing. And that's okay because we're learning. And it's important that we start small. We identify collectively a couple of net new logos or key accounts that we want to win together. We start building those relationships and building trust between the teams. And then we get that repeatable recipe where we can rinse and repeat that formula over and over. It's not an overnight, for sure. It's not an overnight, but my team is learning. We're upskilling as we're working with incredible partners like Infoblox and New Relic, and the ISVs are learning as well. And together we all win.
That's fantastic. Another question that came up is, how about the marketing aspect of co-selling and the digital marketing? And we're doing a lot of co-sell programs and prefacing them, Chris, one of them, with Carasoft, prefacing them with the co-market piece of it, which is equally as important and kind of leads you into the co-sell. So any comments on that and the marketing side of this? Put you on the spot.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. I didn't hear you addressing that to me, so I'll take and respond to it.
I'll put it on the floor.
Listen, I think again, when you center in on, and it takes that deliberate approach to say, with all kind of humility, what really is our value to the shared customers we have? What's going to be the value to the AWS team? And if we land on that, and then we get really prescriptive around, okay, let's take that and push that out, because that becomes essentially the brand of the joint partnership.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a way to think about how can you then amplify the shared brand back to our customers. It's not, and for each of the ISVs that participate with AWS, there's an opportunity to say, well, what is our shared superpower that we want to take and amplify? Because if that resonates, and at the end of the day, we're closely metricing the partnership and the return on investment. And as we think about this, that's such a critical thing to get right early, right? Because then as you think about how you amplify it through digital marketing, through just even I would say even just full integrated campaigns, starting with digital. We have obviously a big press as well in field and with event marketing as well. So those kind of that kind of rolling thunder of an approach from a marketing perspective is just critical to get that shared value proposition really honed and agreed upon by both sides. It's not a superpower unless you both agree that it's something that each of your teams really can grab onto. But I couldn't be more excited about what we're doing with AWS in particular around that.
That's awesome. That's one of the muscles.
Okay.
Go ahead, Larissa.
I was just going to say, so we've taken some of the co-marketing pieces that we've had and brought them to the AWS summits. So that's been really important to share. Here's how we are working together. Here's how we're building solutions. And that's a great place because you're meeting customers, you're meeting your counterparts at AWS, you're meeting leaders, you're meeting customers, and they're seeing you together from a visual. You're having meetings together. So we've amplified that to Chris's point, both on digital, but also at those summits have been really, really successful.
That's great.
Yeah.
one of the things, I'll do this real quick, we teach is the difference between the business proposition to AWS or to New Relic or to the partner, and then these joint value propositions to the customers, because a lot of sellers confuse those for some reason. So getting those, the individual muscles built makes a bigger muscle. All right, I'm going to ask our last question, maybe, because then we're getting some really good questions in the audience. Thank you so much. Please keep those coming. We love that. All right, so last question from us. Let's talk about some partnering success examples, some things you're seeing out there. Maybe there's some things you're doing with, and let's do AWS specifically, since we have Amy right here with us, that are working. And Amy, maybe you could also add some that you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to start, Teresa?
Yeah, why don't you start? Sure.
So this year, one of our strategic priorities in the public sector world is what we call the power of three. It's AWS, the ISV, and the SI selling together to solve a customer problem. And for the first time ever at AWS, we launched a program to support this power of partnership, power of three. It's called Business Accelerator Outcome. We call it BOX internally, just to abbreviate. But simply, it's a way to reward and compensate the ISV, so New Relic or InfoBox, up to $70,000 per solution.
Wow.
Per solution. And we marry the ISV with an SI, and of course, identify a customer together where we can sell this solution. We have matchmaking events. So we play this, think of it like eharmony.com, where we're bringing together ISVs and SIs in the room, where they're oftentimes focused on similar markets, similar type of customer, but they can meet face to face and explore the ways that they can win together. And at the end of the day, Teresa, I think we minimize that we're still in a relationship business. And it's the face-to-face interaction that we have, the relationships that we have, just the four of us on this team, and just preparing for this call, and how our paths have crossed, and we all know the same people. We're in the relationship business, and customers are going to buy from people that they like and that they trust. So we are playing matchmaker to bring InfoBlocks and New Relic together with other SIs to bring that solution to customers and rewarding the ISV along the way.
Love it. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
Currency matters. Go ahead. Larissa, you were going to say something?
Oh, I just said, no, that's a great program.
Is it?
Yeah.
What else, Larissa? What are some other examples that you've seen out there?
So I think to Amy's point, what I would say, and just advice, is to not go broad, to be prescriptive, right? So I think that's where we're trying to get our sellers and even our leaders to pick a vertical and do something really well.
Yeah.
Talk through. I think we get caught up in, Chris, I think you brought it up, is there's a lot that we can do together, but let's be prescriptive and really fine tune a program, a set of accounts, sellers together, train each other, and go that way, do it really well. Then you replicate that to another team, and then you keep going from there. What I think we get hung up on sometimes as leaders out there is we want to do everything. We want to go out to all these partners. We want to go out to all these events. It's like, do something this way first, like small list, and then be able to talk about that and evangelize that both internally at your company and then externally out to AWS. That's been working really well.
Were you going to say something, Amy?
I was agreeing. Yes, start small, have a few use cases, start small, and then learn from those experiences, what went well, what could be improved, and then create the recipe for success.
And another thing we teach in the programs is micro verticals. Start even micro, because that's where a lot of the magic happens of these business impact outcomes that end up becoming hugely valuable, but you only discover that through going through these micro vertical initiatives. So yeah, love it. Chris, any comments on best practices?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the things that I take from this is that we, as InfoBlocks, just our size and scale in comparison to AWS, we think we're a decent sized organization. We're tiny in the grand scheme of things compared to AWS. And so part of the value, the shared value, is both, okay, we think we can address, right, some great value together with our shared customers. But in terms of how we scale effectively, like, we're well aware of the fact that an opportunity to get in front of an AWS seller and tell that story. If you tell it effectively, fantastic. You earn the right to stay until the next call. And then you get to audition again. But you go in and you don't land the message. It's, again, we're trying to create this repeatable success, but it means we've got to be really precise, a little surgical in terms of treating every meeting like it's an audition, because it really is. We think about, how we, and I mean, candidly, we talk about building trust and time and relationships. It's so spot on. And one of the things that's so exciting, I think, for an ISV, certainly one like Infoblox and of our size, is, we look at what's possible when you can really harness the power of this type of a partnership. But as a result of that, sometimes your eyes get a little bit wide and you think about, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. And you want to rush right out the door. And it's like, you actually do need to take a step back and make sure the value is well articulated. It's going to resonate, and you want to test it. And starting in a specific vertical, or even inside, to your point, kind of a micro vertical approach, make sure that you land it. And frankly, because that begets the next conversation, isn't a cold call. It's a, if you really thought that was good value we brought to that customer together, who else in your team should we be talking to? Would you make the introduction?
Absolutely.
Like, it's just a reference selling approach, but I mean, it's as critical in this partnership as in any customer-oriented sale.
Right. We talk about in the system for partnering that Amy, we talk about the trusted relationships. We talk about the business acceleration. So the muscles of co-sell, and then these community influencers, and AWS has become, this community, right? And all of the things that surround, the AWS ecosystem Amy, it's just been so fun to watch this whole thing build over the last, 10 years? 8 years?
10-ish, yeah.
But if I may chime in for a moment, Teresa, because I just wanted to pick up on something that Amy said earlier, which I thought was so spot on. And despite the fact that your engineer might be, or your peer engineer might be a little bit upset that you're on speed dial with him or her, it's like, the fact is, there's also in that ecosystem of who we have to land our message with. It's not just a sales conversation.
Yes.
I mean, ultimately, the trust and credibility on the solution, typically, at least within my organization, comes from folks much smarter than me, that can talk about that can really talk to how the solution fits, how it integrates, and they can come from a place of credibility. Technically, we might not want to stay there too long, right, in the context of the customer, but we have to be able to ensure that there's trust created, that the solution is going to work as advertised every single time. It's such a critical component to the credibility of the larger relationship. Because again, you can take weeks, days, months, years to build trust and credibility. Something doesn't go as advertised with the customer, and it's all gone. So it's just such an important component as well to think through. There's an entire pre-sales ecosystem of architects at AWS. They're as much the audience that we're selling to as our sales peers.
Yeah, I think that's a really good catch. There's all the co's, the co-build, the co-market, the co-solutions, and then there's the tech alliances team, there's the product teams, there's the marketing teams, and all these different personas that also need to be aligned. It's a great point. All right, one last piece of advice that you would give your friends out in the audience on co-sell. Speed round, speed dating. Larissa gets to be the speed dater first.
Don't treat them like a transaction. I'll go back to my original point. I think don't treat it like just a transaction. It's a partnership.
It's a transaction. It's a long-term partnership. Chris Miller, one last piece of advice. Speed dating.
Yeah. My advice would be, listen, if you're here and you're listening to this show live, you're on the right track, right? This doesn't, there's not, as much as sometimes it may feel like there's a mystery out here in terms of how to crack the code in this partnership. It's not. It's pretty formulaic, and there are folks who have done this really successfully. So there are great examples in market. There are great people to reach out to. And obviously, if you're here and you're seeking the advice, you're probably on the right track.
That's a great one. Thank you. Yeah, this is pretty leading edge stuff, what we're doing and how we're doing it and the science of it. And oh, by the way, we now have AI in the midst of that. So that'll be the next topic that we do when we do co-selling again, is with AI. Amy Belcher, bring us home. Your one piece of speed dating.
My friend Chris Millerick stole my answer. There is no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. At the end of the day, we are in the relationship business, and it requires people, all of us, to lean in. So I would encourage those who are listening to continue to lean in, to learn and ask questions. Start small. Again, it's about progress, not perfection.
I love that.
And we are anxious to work with partners. We want to continue to go to market with partners. So lean in, reach out, and ask how to do that.
That's fantastic. Well, you all were terrific. Thank you so much for being amazing guests and for joining us. Yes, I'm so happy. We're doing so much in this space. It's very exciting. And yeah, let's keep innovating together. So thank you.
Love it. Thank you, Teresa. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Larissa.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Great
Amy.
talk, everyone.
Teresa, thank you so much.